Ethan Caldwell eased his sleek black Tesla to a stop at a red light in downtown Phoenix, the Arizona sun glinting off the car's polished surface. At 45, he was the picture of success, a white American real estate mogul whose name adorned skyscrapers and luxury developments across the state. His tailored navy suit, crisp white shirt, and silver cufflinks spoke of wealth that most could only dream of. His penthouse, perched high above the city, offered views of the desert horizon, and his bank account held more zeros than he cared to count. Yet, as he adjusted his sunglasses and tapped the steering wheel, a familiar ache gnawed at his chest, an emptiness no money could fill. The light turned green, and Ethan guided the car through the bustling streets, his mind drifting from the multi-million-dollar deal awaiting his signature. His assistant, Claire, had texted him twice, reminding him of the contracts stacked on his desk at Caldwell Group headquarters. Another acquisition, another block of Phoenix, needs to be reshaped in his image. But today, his thoughts were elsewhere, tangled in memories he'd buried long ago. He turned onto a quieter street lined with faded storefronts and sagging awnings, a remnant of the city's older, humbler days. This was the kind of neighborhood his firm targeted for redevelopment, prime real estate disguised as nostalgia. Then he saw a small wooden stand on the corner, its hand-painted sign swaying gently in the dry breeze. Maya's famous lemonade, best in Phoenix, declared in bold, slightly uneven letters. Ethan's breath caught. The stand was simple, almost out of place amid the urban sprawl, with a folding table, a pitcher of golden liquid, and a stack of paper cups. But it wasn't the stand that stopped him. It was the woman behind it. Maya Thompson, her dark skin glowing under the midday sun, stood wiping down the table with a cloth, her movements graceful and deliberate. Her braids, now threaded with hints of silver, were pulled back, and her smile, as she handed a cup to a young boy, was as radiant as it had been 28 years ago. Ethan's heart thudded, a rhythm he hadn't felt since 17, sneaking out to meet Maya after curfew. He pulled the Tesla to the curb, ignoring the car's honk behind him, and stared. It was her, unmistakably her. The girl who'd stolen his heart with a glass of lemonade and a laugh that made the world feel lighter. The girl his parents had forbidden him to love, calling her unsuitable for the Caldwell name. The girl he'd let slip away under the weight of their expectations. Now, at 45, Ethan was frozen, watching Maya Thompson pour lemonade like no time had passed, with everything he'd ever wanted and nothing he truly needed. "Mr. Caldwell, your 2 p.m. with Sterling Enterprises is confirmed." Claire's voice crackled through the car's Bluetooth, jolting him back to the present. "Should I send the contracts to your tablet?" "Cancel it," Ethan said, his voice low but firm. "Cancel everything for the afternoon." A pause. "Sir, the Sterling deal is—" "I said cancel it, Claire." He ended the call, his eyes never leaving Maya. She hadn't noticed him yet, her focus on a pair of college students who'd stopped for a drink. She said $2 a cup, her voice carrying the same warmth he remembered, a melody that had once been his anchor. She handed them their drinks, her hands steady, her apron slightly worn but clean. The stand was modest, but held a quiet pride, a testament to something enduring. Ethan's mind raced back to 1997, to a summer evening when he'd jogged past this very corner, sweaty and out of breath, and Maya had called out, "Best lemonade in Phoenix, 50 cents." He'd stopped, not because he was thirsty, but because her smile had been impossible to ignore. They'd spent hours talking that day, her grandmother chuckling from the porch, as Maya poured him refill after refill. It was the start of a love that had felt invincible, until his parents, with their old money arrogance, had deemed Maya a black girl from the wrong side of town, a threat to his future. 28 years later, Ethan sat in a car worth more than most people's homes, watching the woman he'd never stopped loving. The lemonade stand was a time capsule, unchanged in its simplicity. But Maya was different. Not just older, but stronger. Her presence commanding the corner like a queen in her domain. He wondered about her life, the years he'd missed. Had she married? Had she found happiness? The question stung, but the sight of her stirred something more profound, a longing to reclaim what he'd lost. His phone buzzed again. Claire, no doubt, scrambling to reschedule his day. Ethan silenced it and stepped out of the car, the heat of the asphalt seeping through his polished shoes. The street was alive with the hum of pedestrians and distant traffic, but to him, it was just Maya, the stand, and the ghost of a summer long gone. He loosened his tie, a small act of rebellion against the life he'd built, and took a step toward the stand. The boy from 1997, the one who'd believed love could conquer anything, was still inside him, urging him forward. Maya looked up, her eyes scanning the street before landing on him. Time seemed to pause for a moment, the years between them shrinking to nothing. Ethan's throat tightened as he saw recognition flicker in her gaze, followed by something else. Surprise, perhaps, or caution. He wanted to speak, to say her name, but the words caught, heavy with the weight of all he'd left unsaid. Instead, he stood there, a millionaire on a sidewalk, feeling like a teenager again, drawn to a lemonade stand that held the key to everything he'd ever truly wanted. Ethan stood on the Phoenix sidewalk, the hum of the city fading as his gaze locked on Maya's lemonade stand. The hand-painted sign, Maya's famous lemonade, best in Phoenix, stirred a memory so vivid it felt like stepping into a photograph. He was 17 again, jogging through this same neighborhood in the summer of 1997, the air thick with the scent of dust and blooming jasmine. Back then, this corner had been his haven, where the world's rules didn't apply, and love felt like it could rewrite his future. It had started with a single moment. Sweaty from a run, Ethan slowed as Maya's voice rang out from her grandmother's front yard. "Best lemonade in Phoenix, 50 cents, she'd called, her grin daring him to keep going. He'd stopped, drawn not by thirst, but by the spark in her eyes. The stand was a rickety table then, draped with a checkered cloth, and Maya, in a faded sundress, poured him a cup with a flourish. She'd said the first one's on the house, but you'd better return. He did, day after day, their conversations stretching from favorite songs to secret dreams. By the end of that summer, they were stealing kisses under the streetlights, promising forever in whispers that drowned out the cicadas. Maya's grandmother, Miss Loretta, had been their biggest ally. She'd watch them from her porch with a knowing smile, her rocking chair creaking as she shelled peas. "You two remind me of me and my Henry," she'd say, her voice warm with memory. Love doesn't care about what folks think. Her approval was a shield against the whispers that followed Ethan and Maya around Phoenix. Whispers about a Caldwell boy, heir to a real estate dynasty, falling for a girl from the working-class side of town. But those whispers grew louder at home, where Ethan's parents, Eleanor and Richard, saw Maya threatening their carefully curated legacy. The Caldwell mansion, with its marble floors and crystal chandeliers, was apart from Maya's modest bungalow. One evening, Ethan's father summoned him to study in a room lined with leather-bound books and the weight of expectation. "You're a Caldwell," Richard said, his voice sharp as the whiskey glass in his hand. "Our name means power and responsibility. That girl, her family, her background, doesn't fit." Eleanor, perched on a velvet chair, was gentler but no less firm. She's sweet, Ethan, but you're meant for bigger things. College, a career, a life she can't share. Their words cut deeper than Ethan expected, planting doubts he wasn't ready to face. Maya sensed the shift. At the lemonade stand one night, she tilted her head as they sat on the curb sharing a single cup. "You're quiet lately. What's wrong?" Ethan wanted to tell her everything, the pressure, the fear of losing her, but pride kept him silent. Instead, he kissed her, hoping it would be enough. It wasn't. When his parents arranged for him to attend an Ivy League college on the East Coast, Ethan saw it as a chance to escape the tension and prove himself on his terms. "I'll write daily," he promised Maya, holding her close as tears streaked her face. "We'll make it work." The letters came at first, hers full of love and sketches of the stand, his stilted with guilt. But college was a whirlwind of new faces and old expectations. His parents' voices echoed in every call home. "Focus on your future. Please don't throw it away." Friends at school, sons of senators and CEOs, spoke of suitable matches. And Ethan, desperate to belong, began to pull away. Maya's letters piled up in his dorm, unanswered, each one a reminder of the boy he was leaving behind. By spring, he stopped writing altogether, convincing himself it was for her sake as much as his own. Standing across from her, Ethan felt the shame of that choice, as if it were a physical weight. The sign hadn't changed in 28 years. Its letters faded but defiant, just like Maya. She was pouring lemonade for a customer, her movements as steady as they'd been when she'd handed him that first free cup. He wondered what her life had been since. Had she kept the stand out of tradition, necessity, or something deeper? While he'd built an empire on compromise, the thought of her resilience made his chest ache. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Claire, probably, with another urgent message about the Sterling Enterprises deal. Ethan ignored it. The deal, the contracts, the boardroom belonged to a life that suddenly felt hollow. He'd spent decades chasing his parents' vision of success, each acquisition a brick in a wall between him and the boy who'd loved Maya. But here, on this corner, that boy was stirring, whispering that it wasn't too late to choose differently. Maya glanced up, her eyes catching his across the street. Ethan's breath hitched. Did she recognize him? Would she even want to? The stand, with its simple promise of the best in Phoenix, was a bridge to their past and a reminder of the gulf between them. Class, time, and choices he couldn't undo. Yet, as he watched her laugh with a customer, her warmth untouched by the years, Ethan felt a spark of hope. Maybe this corner, this moment, was more than a memory. Perhaps it was a chance to rewrite the ending they'd been denied. Ethan Caldwell hesitated on the Phoenix sidewalk, the heat radiating through his polished shoes as he faced Maya Thompson's lemonade stand. The sign, Maya's famous lemonade, best in Phoenix, swayed in the breeze, its faded letters a quiet defiance against time. His heart pounded, a rhythm he hadn't felt since 1997, when he'd sneak out to this corner, drawn by Maya's laugh and a promise of something real. With his Tesla idling behind him and a multi-million-dollar empire waiting, Ethan took a breath and crossed the street, each step peeling back the years. Maya was serving a customer, a teenage girl with earbuds, her hands steady as she poured lemonade from a glass pitcher. The stand was simple: a wooden table, a stack of paper cups, a small jar for cash. But it was warm, making the bustling street feel intimate. Maya's apron, tied neatly over a floral blouse, was flecked with citrus stains, and her braids, caught in a loose bun, shimmered under the sun. She hadn't seen him yet, her focus on the girl, who handed over a crumpled dollar. The teen said, "Keep the change." Maya's smile, bright and unguarded, hit Ethan like a memory come to life. He stopped a few feet from the stand, his throat tight. What could he say after 28 years of silence? The boy who'd loved her had been buried under boardrooms and contracts. But here, on this corner, he felt alive again. Maya glanced up, her eyes scanning the street before landing on him. Her smile faltered, replaced by a flicker of recognition that softened into something else. Caution, perhaps, or hope. She said, "Welcome to Maya's famous lemonade," her voice steady but laced with a question. "What can I get you?" Ethan swallowed, his polished confidence deserting him. "Still the best in town?" he asked, echoing the tease he'd used as a teenager, when he'd linger at her stand to hear her laugh. Maya's lips twitched, a spark of their old banter flashing in her eyes. "Same recipe, same corner," she replied, her tone light but guarded. "Every day for 28 years. She reached for a cup, her movements deliberate, as if measuring more than just lemonade. Ethan stepped closer, the scent of citrus and sugar stirring memories of summer nights and stolen kisses. Their fingers brushed as she handed him the cup, a fleeting contact that jolted him. The lemonade was cold, its sweet tangy bite exactly as he remembered, like a sip of 1997. "You kept it going," he said, his voice low, almost reverent. "Miss Loretta's recipe." Maya nodded, wiping her hands on her apron. "Promised her I would." She said this corner was for dreams, not just drinks. Her words carried a weight Ethan couldn't ignore, a testament to her resilience, to a life built on promises he'd failed to keep. He took another sip, searching her face for clues to the years between them. Her eyes, warm but wary, held stories he hadn't been part of. "You're still here," he said, the words slipping out before he could stop them. "I mean, this stand, this place. Nothing's changed." Maya's gaze sharpened, a shadow crossing her face. "Everything's changed," she corrected, her voice soft but firm. "But some things are worth holding on to." She gestured to the stand, her pride evident, and Ethan felt ashamed for the life he'd chosen, one that had left this corner behind. The moment was broken by a group of construction workers approaching, their hard hats glinting in the sun. "There are 2 cups, Maya, and one called tossing coins into the jar." She served them easily, her smile returning. But Ethan's attention snagged on their conversation. The worker said that this block's getting bought up, nodding toward a nearby vacant lot. "Caldwell Group is turning it into condos." Maya's hands paused mid-pour, her expression unreadable, and Ethan's stomach twisted. His company's latest project, luxury developments to revitalize old neighborhoods, included this street. "News travels fast," Maya said, handing over the cups, her tone neutral. The workers moved on, and she turned back to Ethan, her eyes searching his. "Your name's on many signs these days," she said, not accusingly, but with a clarity that cut. Ethan gripped his cup, the paper crinkling. "It's just business," he started, but the words felt hollow. This wasn't just business. Her corner, her dreams, where they'd once planned a future. The realization hit him. His empire, built on his parents' blueprint, could destroy the one thing that still felt like home. He said, "I didn't know you were here," the truth spilling out. Not until today. Maya studied him, her silence louder than the street's hum. "Well, you're here now," she said finally, her voice a mix of challenge and invitation. She straightened a stack of cups, her movements a quiet assertion of control. Ethan wanted to say more, to apologize and explain, but his phone buzzed in his pocket, a reminder of the world he'd paused in. He ignored it, his eyes locked on Maya. "Can I come back?" He asked the question, carrying more weight than he intended. Maya's lips curved into a small, cautious smile. "Stands open every day," she said, then added softer, "You know where to find me." She turned to a new customer, her focus shifting. But Ethan felt the spark of their connection linger, fragile but undeniable. As he walked back to his car, the lemonade's taste lingered too, a promise of something he'd lost and might still reclaim, if he could bridge the gap between the man he'd become and the boy who'd loved her. Maya Thompson locked the lemonade stand's cash jar, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the Phoenix corner. With its weathered table and hand-painted sign, the stand was more than a business. It was a promise kept to her grandmother, Miss Loretta, whose recipes still drew a steady stream of customers. Maya's thoughts lingered on Ethan Caldwell, the last patron to wander off, whose unexpected appearance hours ago had stirred a storm of memories. She tucked the jar under her arm and headed toward Maya's place, her diner just a block away, its neon sign flickering in the dusk. The diner's door chimed as Maya entered, the familiar hum of chatter and clinking dishes wrapping around her like a warm blanket. Maya's place was modest, worn vinyl booths, a counter lined with red stools, a jukebox that played Motown classics. But it was hers, built from years of sweat and stubborn hope. The walls told her story in framed photos. Opening day in 2003, her late husband James grinning beside her, their daughter, Nia, as a toddler, giggling in a high chair, and Miss Loretta, her hands on her hips, beaming at the lemonade stand. Each image was a milestone, a testament to a life forged through loss and love. Maya paused by a photo from 2005, the memory as sharp as the scent of fresh coffee. The diner had been on the brink of foreclosure then, and the recession hit Phoenix hard. James, always chasing dreams of quick wealth, had promised to fix it, but his schemes only deepened their debt. Maya, refusing to let her grandmother's legacy crumble, had rallied the neighborhood. Regulars like Joe, a retired teacher, and Maria, a nurse, had organized a fundraiser. Live music, homemade pies, and endless pitchers of lemonade. They'd raised enough to save the diner, and Maya had stood on the counter at midnight, tears streaming as the community cheered. That night, she'd learned what she was made of. Not just grit, but a love that bound her to this place and its people. Now, wiping down a table, Maya felt that strength anew, even as Ethan's return threatened to unravel it. Nia emerged from the kitchen, her apron dusted with flour, her eyes, a mirror of Maya's, narrowing as she spotted her mother's distant expression. "You're thinking about him, aren't you?" Nia asked, her tone sharp but laced with concern. At 26, Nia was a force, her quick wit matched by a fierce protectiveness. She'd grown up hearing stories of Ethan, the boy who'd broken Maya's heart, and now he was back, a millionaire whose company could bulldoze their corner. Maya said he just stopped by the stand, her voice steady as she polished a salt shaker. Didn't expect to see him after all this time. Nia crossed her arms, leaning against the counter. "And you're okay with that? After what his family did?" Maya sighed, setting the shaker down. She'd never hidden the past from Nia, the way Ethan's parents had deemed her unworthy, the scholarship they'd blocked, the job they'd cost Miss Loretta at their company. But she'd also shared the good, the summer nights when Ethan had helped her paint the stand, his laughter mingling with hers under the stars. "He's not his parents," Maya said, though doubt flickered in her chest. Nia snorted, grabbing a rag to wipe the counter. "He's still a Caldwell. His name's on those signs promising to tear down half the neighborhood." Maya glanced out the window, where the lemonade stand stood like a sentinel. She'd heard the rumors about Caldwell Group's redevelopment plans. Luxury condos, high-end shops, no room for places like hers. The thought of losing this corner, where she'd rebuilt her life after James's death, tightened her throat. The diner's door chimed, and Joe shuffled in, his newspaper tucked under his arm. "Evening, Maya," he called, sliding into his usual booth. "Heard you had a visitor today. That Caldwell boy?" Maya forced a smile, pouring him a coffee. "Word travels fast, Joe." He chuckled, his eyes crinkling. "This place is the heart of the neighborhood. Folks notice when a big shot rolls up in a fancy car." Maria, finishing her shift at the hospital, joined him. Her scrubs wrinkled, but her grin wide. "Spill, Maya. Is he as dreamy as you said he was?" Maya laughed, the tension easing. "He's trouble. That's what he is." But her mind drifted to Ethan's eyes, the way they'd softened when he'd taken the lemonade cup, as if he saw the girl she'd been. She'd built a life without him, raising Nia, keeping the diner afloat after James's death, serving lemonade to honor Miss Loretta. Yet Ethan's presence stirred a longing she'd buried, a reminder of dreams she'd once dared to dream. Nia watched her, her expression softening, but still wary. "Just be careful, Mama. We've got enough to deal with without a Caldwell stirring things up." Maya nodded, squeezing her daughter's hand. Nia was her anchor, the reason she'd kept going when grief and debt threatened to break her. But as she looked at the photos on the wall, James's hopeful smile, Nia's first steps, the community that had saved her, she knew this diner, this corner, was more than a business. It was her legacy, one that Ethan's wealth couldn't touch. Outside, the neon sign of Maya's place glowed, casting a warm light over the street. Maya stepped behind the counter, her apron a badge of her resilience. Ethan's return was a spark, but she'd faced harder fires and come out stronger. Whatever came next, love, loss, or a fight for her corner, she'd face it with the same strength that had carried her through 28 years of pouring lemonade and building a home. The bell above the door of Maya's place chimed sharply, cutting through the evening hum of the diner. Maya Thompson looked up from the counter, where she was refilling sugar jars, her hands steady, despite the unease Ethan Caldwell's visit to her lemonade stand had stirred hours earlier. The neon glow of the diner's sign cast a warm light over the worn booths, where a few regulars lingered over coffee and pie. Nia, wiping down a table, paused as an elegant figure stepped inside. Eleanor Caldwell, Ethan's mother, her silver hair swept into a perfect chignon, her designer coat starkly contrasting with the diner's homely charm. Eleanor's heels clicked on the linoleum as she surveyed the space, her lips pursed in barely concealed disdain. Maya straightened, wiping her hands on her apron, and the citrus stains were a badge of her labor. Mrs. Caldwell said, her voice calm but firm, "We're closing soon. Can I get you something?" Eleanor's eyes, cold and assessing, met hers. "I'm not here for coffee, Maya. I'm here to talk business." She pulled a checkbook from her purse, the leather embossed with her initials, and placed it on the counter with deliberate care. Nia moved closer, her eyes narrowing. "What kind of business?" she asked, her tone sharp, protective. Maya gently touched her daughter's arm, a silent signal to hold back. Eleanor ignored Nia, focusing on Maya. "She said you've done well for yourself," her voice dripping with condescension. "This little diner, that lemonade stand, it's quaint. But my son is at a critical juncture. The Caldwell Group is finalizing a merger with Sterling Enterprises that is worth billions. Ethan's reputation can't afford distractions." Maya's jaw tightened. She'd faced Eleanor's scorn in 1997, when the Caldwells had deemed her unworthy of their son, a girl from the wrong side of Phoenix, unfit for their legacy. "Distractions?" she echoed, her voice steady. "You mean Ethan is stopping by my stand today?" Eleanor's smile was thin, practiced. "Exactly. He's always been sentimental, but sentiment doesn't build empires. I'm offering you a way out. Name your price for the diner, the stand, and the block." The diner went quiet, the regulars' chatter fading as Joe and Maria exchanged glances from their booth. Nia stepped forward, her fists clenched. "Can you buy us out? This place is our home." Eleanor's gaze flicked to Nia, then back to Maya. "Don't be foolish," she said. "Ethan's world is not yours. This merger, his future, depends on stability. Your little corner is charming, but it's in the way of progress. Sell now, and you'll be set for life." Maya's heart pounded, not with fear, but with a fire kindled by years of standing her ground. She thought of Miss Loretta, who taught her to pour love into every glass of lemonade, and of the community that had saved this diner in 2005. She leaned across the counter, her eyes locked on Eleanor's. "My dreams aren't for sale, Mrs. Caldwell. Not then, not now. This diner, this stand, they're more than property. They're my life, built without your family's money or approval." Eleanor's composure faltered, her fingers tightening on the checkbook. "You're making a mistake," she said, her voice low. "Ethan may be charmed by nostalgia, but he'll come to his senses. He always does." She shut the checkbook and turned toward the door, pausing to add, "You'll regret this, Maya. The world doesn't run on lemonade and ideals." The bell chimed as she left, the sound echoing like a warning. Nia exhaled, her shoulders slumping. "She hasn't changed, has she?" she said, her voice a mix of anger and worry. Maya shook her head, returning to the sugar jars, though her hands trembled slightly. "No, but I have," she said. "I'm not the girl who lets them push her away." She glanced at the photos on the wall. James holding Nia as a baby, the diner's opening day, the lemonade stand under Miss Loretta's watchful eye. Each image was a brick in the life she'd built, a life Eleanor's wealth couldn't touch. Joe cleared his throat from his booth, his newspaper lowered. "That woman's trouble, Maya, but you held your own. Always do." Maria nodded, her nurse's scrubs creased from a long shift. "This place is ours, too. Let her try to take it." Their words warmed Maya, a reminder of the community that had always been her strength. But Nia's expression remained guarded. "What about Ethan?" she asked. "Is he like her, Mama? Or is he different?" Maya paused, the memory of Ethan's hesitant smile at the stand flashing in her mind. "I don't know yet," she admitted. "But I won't let anyone, not Eleanor, not Ethan, take what we've built." She squeezed Nia's hand, feeling the weight of her daughter's trust. Outside, the neon sign of Maya's place glowed, a beacon against the night. Eleanor's offer was a threat, but also a challenge, one Maya had faced before and would face again, with the same resilience that had carried her through 28 years of love, loss, and lemonade. The morning sun filtered through the windows of Maya's place, casting golden patches on the diner's checkered floor. Maya Thompson was behind the counter, flipping pancakes with practiced ease, the sizzle mingling with the jukebox's soft Motown hum. The breakfast rush was in full swing, with regulars like Joe and Maria chatting over coffee, their voices a comforting rhythm. But Maya's thoughts drifted to Eleanor Caldwell's chilling offer the previous evening, to buy out her diner and lemonade stand to keep Ethan Caldwell from ruining his future. She pushed the memory aside, focusing on the griddle. But her daughter, Nia, was not so easily distracted. Nia stood at the counter's far end, sketching with her pencil, moving with fierce precision in a worn notebook. Her apron, tied loosely over jeans and a paint-splattered shirt, was a canvas of flour and dreams. She'd always been an artist, her sketches of Phoenix's streets and faces capturing a beauty most overlooked. Lately, her drawings had turned to the lemonade stand, its weathered wood and bright sign a symbol of her mother's strength. But today, her strokes were sharp, almost angry, as she glanced at Maya. "You're too quiet, Mama," she said, her voice low enough to avoid the regulars' ears. Still thinking about that Caldwell woman? Maya slid a plate of pancakes to Joe, forcing a smile. Just a busy morning, Nia. But her daughter's eyes, sharp and searching, missed nothing. Nia closed her notebook and leaned against the counter. You can't let her get to you or him. He was Ethan, whose visit to the lemonade stand yesterday had reopened old wounds. Nia had grown up on Maya's stories of young love and heartbreak, of Ethan's promises, broken under his parents' pressure. To Nia, he was a cautionary tale, not a second chance. Maya said, I'm not letting anyone get to me, wiping her hands on her apron. We've got a diner to run. But Nia's gaze lingered, protective and fierce. She'd seen Maya rebuild after her father, James, died, leaving debts and dreams unfulfilled. Nia had been 21 then, juggling college and diner shifts, watching her mother pour lemonade to keep their world afloat. Now, with Ethan back and his company's redevelopment plans threatening their corner, Nia's guard was higher than ever. The bell chimed, and Ethan stepped inside, his usual suit replaced by a simple button-down, sleeves rolled up. The diner hushed briefly, Joe raising an eyebrow over his coffee. Ethan hesitated, then approached the counter. Morning, Maya, he said, his voice soft but steady. Thought I'd grab a coffee. Maya nodded, pouring a cup, her movements calm despite the flutter in her chest. Black, no sugar, right? She asked, remembering his old order. He smiled, a flicker of their past sparking in his eyes. You remember? Nia's pencil stopped, her eyes narrowing as she watched Ethan. Before Maya could respond, a clatter came from the parking lot. Joe peered out the window. Looks like Maria's got a flat tire, he said. Ethan set down his cup. I'll take a look. He headed outside, where Maria, in her nurse's scrubs, was frowning at her car. Nia followed, curious despite herself, as Ethan knelt by the tire, pulling a spare from the trunk with surprising ease. Not my usual boardroom skill, he joked, tightening the lug nuts. But I've changed a tire or two. Maria laughed, patting his shoulder. You're all right, Caldwell. Nia, leaning against the diner's wall, watched silently, her sketchbook tucked under her arm. When Ethan returned, wiping grease from his hands, she spoke up. That doesn't change anything, she said, her voice low. You're still the guy who left. Ethan met her gaze, unflinching. I know. I'm trying to make that right. Nia's lips pressed tight, but she didn't look away, a crack forming in her defenses. Back inside, Maya handed Ethan a fresh coffee. Thanks for helping, Maria, she said. Didn't expect that from a CEO. Ethan shrugged, a hint of vulnerability in his smile. I'm not just a CEO here. Now sketching again, Nia paused to draw Ethan's profile, her pencil capturing the lines of regret in his face. Later, alone in the kitchen, she showed Maya the sketch. I want to open a gallery, Nia said, her voice hesitant for artists like me, who see the world differently. But I'm scared, Mama. What if Ethan's just like Dad, promising the world and leaving us with nothing? Maya touched the sketch, seeing Nia's fear and talent intertwined. Your father loved us, but he chased shortcuts. Ethan's different, or he could be. Trust takes time. Nia nodded, her guard still up but softening. Outside, the lemonade stand stood under the morning sun, a quiet promise of resilience. Maya knew Nia's heart was her own to protect, but Ethan's small act of kindness had planted a seed that might grow if he proved worthy of their trust. Ethan Caldwell sat in the sleek boardroom of Caldwell Group, the Phoenix skyline sprawling beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. The polished mahogany table reflected the faces of the board members, their murmurs tense as Victoria Sterling, The sharp-eyed executive from Sterling Enterprises outlined the merger's final terms. Her tailored blazer and calculated smile exuded confidence, but Ethan's attention drifted, his thoughts anchored to Maya Thompson's lemonade stand and the diner that held her heart. The merger, worth billions, promised to cement his legacy. Yet the cost, potentially Maya's corner, felt like a betrayal of the boy he'd once been. Victoria's voice cut through his haze. "Ethan, the board needs your commitment. Sterling Enterprises can't move forward with doubts about your focus." Her tone was smooth, but her eyes lingered on him, hinting at a personal alliance she'd been pushing for months. Ethan shifted in his chair, his tie suddenly too tight. "My focus is clear," he said, his voice steady but clipped. "But I need details on the redevelopment plan for the Southside blocks." The room stilled, the board members exchanging glances. Victoria's smile tightened. "That's a minor detail. Luxury condos, retail, standard progress." "It's not minor," Ethan countered, his mind flashing to Maya's stand, its hand-painted sign defiant against the city's sprawl. "Those blocks are home to businesses and families." Victoria leaned forward, her voice low. "Sentiment won't secure our investors, or your position." The threat hung in the air, but Ethan's phone buzzed. A message from his assistant. "Claire. Urgent. Financial records on Maya's place. Call me." He excused himself, stepping into the hall, his heart racing as Claire revealed the truth. Maya's diner was at risk of foreclosure, tied to a $2 million gambling debt from her late husband James, owed to Reggie Carter, a notorious loan shark. Ethan's stomach churned. Maya hadn't mentioned the debt, but he could see her pride in every cup of lemonade she poured and every plate she served at Maya's place. Paying it off would be easy for him. His wealth could erase the problem in a day. But would she accept his help? He drove to the diner, the neon sign glowing against the twilight, and found Maya behind the counter, serving coffee to Joe, the retired teacher, while Maria, the nurse, laughed with a customer. Nia was in the kitchen, her sketchbook open, her eyes narrowing as Ethan entered. "Maya, can we talk?" Ethan asked, his voice low. She nodded, wiping her hands on her apron, and led him to a quiet booth. The photos on the wall, James, Nia, the diner's opening day, watched over them. "I heard about the debt," Ethan said, his words careful. "James's loans, the bank's threats. I can help." Maya's expression hardened, her fingers tightening on the table. "Who told you?" "Your mother?" Ethan shook his head. "My people looked into it. Reggie Carter's no small player. Let me pay him off, Maya. You don't have to lose this place." Nia appeared, her apron dusted with flour, her voice sharp. "She doesn't need your money, Ethan. She's been handling things on her own since you walked away." Maya raised a hand, silencing her daughter. "Nia's right," she said, her eyes meeting Ethan's. "I've fought for this diner through worse. James made mistakes, and I've been paying for them, literally. But I don't need a savior. I need respect." Ethan leaned forward, his voice earnest. "I respect you, Maya. More than you know. But Carter's dangerous. You can't fight him alone. You think I haven't faced danger?" Maya's voice was steady, but her eyes held a storm. "When James died, I had creditors at my door, Nia to raise, and this diner to keep. I didn't break then, and I won't now." Nia's gaze softened, but she added, "Dad thought money could fix everything. It didn't. Don't make the same mistake." Ethan's chest ached, the weight of his past choices colliding with his present. He wanted to protect Maya, but her strength, forged through years he'd missed, demanded he listen, not act. Joe called from his booth, breaking the tension. "Maya, can you have a refill?" She smiled, rising to pour coffee, her movements a quiet assertion of control. Ethan watched, the diner's warmth contrasting with his boardroom's cold calculations. Victoria's merger, Carter's debt, his mother's schemes, they all pressed on him. But Maya's resilience was a beacon. "I'll find another way," he promised, standing. "No quick fixes, just solutions we can face together." Maya nodded, her expression cautious but open. "We'll see, Ethan." As he left, Nia's sketchbook caught his eye. A drawing of the lemonade stand, its lines fierce and proud. Outside, the neon sign of Maya's place glowed, a symbol of a life Ethan wanted to be part of, if he could prove he deserved it. The neon sign of Maya's place buzzed softly, casting a warm glow over the Phoenix diner as the morning rush faded. Maya Thompson stood behind the counter, her apron tied tight, pouring coffee for Joe, the retired teacher, whose newspaper lay folded beside his plate. The jukebox hummed a Marvin Gaye tune, but the air felt heavy with the weight of recent days. Eleanor Caldwell's bribe, Ethan Caldwell's offer to pay off Reggie Carter's loan, and the looming threat of the Caldwell Group's redevelopment. Maya's daughter, Nia, was wiping tables, her sketchbook tucked away, her eyes sharp with worry. The bell above the door chimed, and Eleanor Caldwell swept in, her designer coat contrasting with the diner's worn charm. Behind her was Victoria Sterling, her sleek blazer and cold smile signaling trouble. Maya's grip on the coffee pot tightened as Eleanor slid into a booth, pulling out a folder of documents. "We need to talk, Maya," she said, her voice smooth but edged with steel, woman to woman. Victoria remained standing, her gaze sweeping the diner with disdain. She added that this could have been discreet, but you forced our hand. Nia stepped forward, her voice sharp. "We're close to you." Maya raised a hand, calming her daughter, and faced Eleanor. "Say what you came to say." Eleanor opened the folder, revealing loan documents with Maya's signature from years ago, tied to James's $2 million debt to Reggie Carter. "Eleanor said you knew where the money came from," her eyes narrowing. "Illegal loans, and you signed anyway." Victoria leaned in, her tone cutting. "You suspect Ethan's interest is tied to our redevelopment plans. Sell now, and we'll clear the debt. Carter, the bank, all of it." Maya's heart pounded, the shame of James's secrets rising like bile. She'd signed those papers in desperation, believing his promises of legitimate investors. "I trusted my husband," she said, her voice steady despite the ache. "I didn't know about Carter until it was too late." She looked at the documents, then at Eleanor and Victoria. "Can you buy my silence, my home, with this? I've faced worse than you and kept this place alive. Truth belongs in the light." The bell chimed again, and Reggie Carter sauntered in, his expensive suit at odds with his predatory grin. "Heard my name," he said, sliding onto a stool. "Nice place, Maya. Shame it's underwater." Joe's newspaper lowered, his eyes watchful, as Maria edged closer from her booth. Nia's fists clenched, but Maya stood tall. "You want your money, Carter? We'll settle it legally, no shadows." Carter chuckled, unfazed. "Legal's slow. I prefer my methods. 5 million, with interest, by Friday." Before Maya could respond, Ethan burst through the door, his face taut with resolve. Behind him was Richard Caldwell, his father, looking weary in a simple jacket. Ethan's eyes found Maya's, then flicked to the gathered adversaries. "Enough," he said, his voice commanding. He turned to a reporter hovering outside, camera rolling, and spoke clearly. "I'm Ethan Caldwell, and I'm halting the merger with Sterling Enterprises. My family's built its empire on deals like Carter's, backroom bribes, threats. That ends now." Richard stepped forward, his voice low but firm. He's right. I've been part of those deals, including Carter's loans for our 2019 projects. I told the board everything this morning. Eleanor gasped, her composure cracking. Richard, you'll ruin us. He shook his head. Secrets have ruined us. It's time to face them. Victoria's eyes flashed. You're throwing away billions, Ethan. And for what? Her? She gestured at Maya, but Ethan's gaze didn't waver. For what's right, he said. Maya's worth more than your merger. Maya's chest tightened, her shame over James's debts mingling with pride. I should have told you about the loans, she said to Ethan, her voice soft but clear. I was ashamed, not just of the debt, but of how I let James hide the truth. I signed because I was afraid of losing everything. Ethan reached for her hand, his touch steady. We'll fight this together, Maya. No secrets, no payoffs. Carter, you'll deal with our lawyers or the FBI. Carter stood, his grin fading. You're changing the game, Caldwell. Hope you're ready for the fallout. He left. The bells chime a sharp punctuation. Eleanor gathered her folder, her face pale. She said you're making a mistake, Ethan, but her voice lacked conviction. Victoria followed, already on her phone, her empire teetering. Richard lingered, meeting Maya's eyes. I owe you an apology, he said. 28 years ago, and for this. Maya nodded, her forgiveness unspoken but real. As the diner emptied, Joe spoke up, his voice gruff. That was something, Maya. You need a refill after all that? She laughed, the sound breaking the tension, and poured him coffee. Nia touched her mother's arm, her sketchbook open to a new drawing of Maya standing tall, the diner glowing behind her. The neon sign shone outside, a beacon of truth in the morning light. Maya and Ethan stood together, the weight of secrets lifting. Their bond forged anew in the promise of facing the future side by side. The morning sun bathed Maya's place in a golden glow, its neon sign dim but steady against the phoenix dawn. Inside, the diner buzzed with more energy than Maya Thompson had seen in years. The aftermath of Ethan Caldwell's public rejection of the Sterling Enterprises merger and his father Richard's confession about past shady deals had sparked a firestorm of media attention. Reporters lingered outside, their cameras trained on the lemonade stand across the street. But inside, the heart of the neighborhood was beating strong. Maya moved between tables, her apron a familiar shield, pouring coffee for a growing crowd of regulars and newcomers drawn by the story of a diner standing defiant against corporate greed. The retired teacher, Joe, sat in his usual booth, his newspaper open to a headline. Caldwell Group halts merger. CEO vows community focus. He chuckled, sipping his coffee. You're famous now, Maya. This place is going to need more chairs. Maria, the nurse, nodded from the next booth, her scrubs swapped for a casual sweater. Folks are calling you the Queen of Phoenix. They're here for the lemonade and the love story. Maya laughed, but her eyes flicked to the stack of bills on the counter. James's $2 million debt to Reggie Carter, now ballooned to $5 million with interest, and the bank's foreclosure threat loomed large. Nia emerged from the kitchen, her sketchbook tucked under her arm, her expression a mix of pride and worry. Mama said, we can't keep up with this crowd, tying her apron tighter. We need help. Maya nodded, her mind racing. The diner was her life, but Carter's demands and the bank's deadline were a vice tightening daily. Ethan stepped through the door, his usual suit replaced by jeans and a flannel shirt, a far cry from the boardroom polish. He carried a tray of fresh lemons, his face lit with a tentative grin. Thought I'd lend a hand, he said, setting the tray by the counter. Maya raised an eyebrow, handing him an apron. Have you ever squeezed a lemon, Caldwell? Joe called out, grinning. Careful, Ethan, Maya's recipe is tougher than your contracts." The regulars laughed, and Ethan tied on the apron, his hands clumsy as he started slicing lemons. Maria leaned over, teasing, "You're mangling those, city boy. Let me show you." She guided his knife, her nurse's precision turning the task into a lesson. Ethan's warm and unguarded laugh filled the diner, and Maya caught Nia watching, her pencil pausing over a sketch of the bustling scene. The bell chimed, and a group of neighbors entered. Carlos, a local mechanic, and Aisha, a schoolteacher, carrying posters. "We've got an idea," Carlos said, spreading one out. "Save Maya's place. Lemonade for love." Aisha explained, "We're organizing a community campaign. Lemonade sales, bake-offs, music nights, to raise funds for the diner. The whole neighborhood's in." Maya's throat tightened. Memories of the 2005 fundraiser flashing back, when these same faces had saved her from ruin. She said, "You don't have to do this," but Joe waved her off. "This place is ours too, Maya. We're not letting Carter or any bank take it." Ethan, wiping lemon juice from his hands, spoke up. He said, "I've got something to add," pulling papers from his pocket. "I contacted the Small Business Association. With its 28-year history, Maya's place qualifies for a $500,000 loan with fair terms and low interest. It'll cover the bank's demands and let you hire staff." Maya studied the papers, her fingers tracing the numbers. It wasn't a complete fix for Carter's $5 million, but it was a lifeline, legal and transparent, unlike James's desperate deals. "No strings?" she asked, her eyes meeting Ethan's. "None," he promised. "Just a chance to keep this place alive." Nia's gaze softened, her sketchbook open to a drawing of the lemonade stand, surrounded by neighbors. "You're learning, Ethan," she said, a hint of approval in her voice. "But Mama's still the boss." The regulars cheered, and Maya felt a weight lift. Not the whole burden, but enough to breathe. She handed Ethan a pitcher. "If you're serious, make the lemonade. Miss Loretta's recipe. Please don't mess it up." Ethan grinned, stirring sugar and water under Joe's watchful eye, his efforts clumsy but earnest. "Too much sugar," Joe teased, and Maria added, "Needs more heart, Caldwell." As the day unfolded, the campaign took shape. Aisha organized volunteers, Carlos set up tables outside, and customers poured in, buying lemonade and sharing stories of Maya's place. First dates, late-night talks, moments that made it home. Ethan worked alongside them, his hands blistered, but his smile growing. Nia sketched the scene, her lines capturing the community's spirit. Maya watched, her heart swelling. Carter's threat and the bank's deadline still loomed, but this diner, this neighborhood, was her strength. With Ethan by her side, not as a savior, but as a partner, she felt ready to fight, surrounded by the love that had always carried her through. The afternoon light filtered through the windows of Maya's place, casting soft patterns on the diner's checkered floor. Maya Thompson stood behind the counter, her apron dusted with flour from a morning spent baking pies for the Save Maya's Place campaign. The diner hummed with quiet energy. Joe, the retired teacher, read his newspaper in his usual booth, while Maria, the nurse, chatted with Aisha, the schoolteacher organizing the next fundraiser. The community's support, sparked by Ethan Caldwell's public stand against the Sterling merger and Reggie Carter's threats, had turned the diner into a beacon of hope. But Maya's mind was on the $5 million debt to Carter, a shadow the $500,000 Small Business Association loan couldn't entirely dispel. The bell above the door chimed, and Eleanor Caldwell stepped inside, alone this time, her designer coat replaced by a simple cardigan. Her silver hair was slightly mussed, her posture less rigid than the imperious figure who'd tried to buy Maya's diner days ago. Maya paused, her hands stilling on a coffee pot, as Nia looked up from her sketchbook at the counter, her eyes narrowing. "Mrs. Caldwell," Maya said, her voice calm but guarded. "What brings you back?" Eleanor hesitated, clutching a manila envelope, her eyes flickering with something new. Vulnerability. "I need to speak with you, Maya," Eleanor said, her voice softer than before. "Privately, if possible." Nia's pencil stopped, her protective instincts flaring, but Maya nodded, gesturing to a quiet booth near the back. Joe and Maria exchanged glances, their presence a silent support, as Maya sat across from Eleanor, her apron a shield of resilience. Nia lingered nearby, her sketchbook open but untouched, her gaze fixed on the two women. Eleanor set the envelope on the table, her fingers trembling slightly. "I owe you an apology," she began, her voice low. "Not just for the other day, but for 1997. Maya's breath caught. Memories of that summer, Ethan's promises, the Caldwell's disdain, surfacing sharply. Eleanor continued, her eyes fixed on the table. "I sabotaged your scholarship to Howard University. I called in favors, leaned on the board, because I thought you'd ruin Ethan's future. I was wrong, Maya. I saw you as a threat, not a person, and I've carried that guilt ever since." Maya's hands clenched, the old wound reopening. That scholarship had been her dream, a chance to study business, to build a life beyond the lemonade stand. Its loss had forced her to stay in Phoenix, marry James, and fight for every inch of her diner. "Maya said you took more than a scholarship," her voice steady but raw. "You took my choices." Eleanor nodded, her eyes glistening. "I know, and I watched you from a distance. Your diner, your daughter, your strength. I couldn't admit I was wrong, but I couldn't stop caring either." She slid the envelope toward Maya. "This is a trust fund for Nia, set up after your husband died. I wanted her to have options, but I denied you." Maya opened the envelope, revealing documents for a $200,000 fund to support Nia's dream of opening an art gallery. Nia, overhearing, stepped closer, her expression a mix of shock and suspicion. "Why now?" she asked, her voice sharp. Eleanor met her gaze, unflinching. "Because I'm tired of hiding from my mistakes. I don't expect forgiveness, but want to start making things right." Maya studied Eleanor, seeing not the cold matriarch, but a woman humbled by regret. "This doesn't erase the past," Maya said, her voice firm but not unkind. "But it's a step. Nia deserves her dreams, and I won't stand in the way of that." Nia took the envelope, her fingers tracing the papers, her eyes softening. "For Mama's sake, I'll accept it," she said. "But don't think this buys your son a free pass." Eleanor's lips curved in a faint, sad smile. "He'll have to earn that himself." The bell chimed again, and Ethan entered, his flannel shirt speckled with lemon juice from his morning at the lemonade stand. He froze, seeing his mother, but Maya waved him over. "Your mother's making amends," she said, her tone neutral. Ethan sat, his eyes searching Eleanor's. "Is this true?" he asked. She nodded, her voice breaking. "I was wrong about Maya. About you. I'm trying to learn." Ethan reached for Maya's hand, and his touch was a quiet promise. "We're learning together," he said, his voice steady. Joe called from his booth, breaking the moment. "Maya, can you have a pie slice? All this drama's making me hungry." The diner laughed, the tension easing, and Maria said, "Make it quick, or I'll eat Ethan's share." Maya rose, her apron symbolizing strength, and handed Eleanor a coffee. "Stay if you want," she said. "This place is about second chances." Eleanor stayed, sipping quietly, as Nia sketched the scene. A diner glowing with hope, a community standing firm, and a family, broken and mending, finding its way in the light. The early morning sun glinted off the copper roof of the rebuilt lemonade stand outside Maya's place, its hand-painted sign still proclaiming Maya's famous lemonade, best in Phoenix. Maya Thompson flipped pancakes inside the diner on the griddle, the sizzle blending with the jukebox's soulful hum. The Save Maya's Place campaign had brought a steady stream of customers, their chatter filling the air with warmth. Joe, the retired teacher, sipped coffee in his booth, while Maria, the nurse, teased Aisha about her latest fundraiser flyer. But all eyes occasionally drifted to Ethan Caldwell, who stood behind the counter, his flannel shirt stained with coffee, attempting to pour Maya's lemonade recipe with a concentration that bordered on comedic. Ethan's hands, more accustomed to signing contracts than stirring pitchers, fumbled with the sugar scoop, sending a dusting across the counter. Joe chuckled, lowering his newspaper. "You're drowning it, Caldwell. Maya's recipe doesn't need a sugar avalanche." Maya glanced over, her apron dusted with flour, a smile tugging at her lips. "Ease up, Ethan. It's about balance, not force." Ethan grinned, wiping his brow. This is harder than closing a deal. His earnest struggle, a far cry from the polished CEO who'd once driven a Tesla, warmed the diner, even as Nia watched from the kitchen, her sketchbook open but her pencil still. Weeks ago, Ethan had stepped down as CEO of Caldwell Group, selling his shares to fund a community development project that preserved Maya's Place as its heart. The decision had cost him billions, leaving him wealthy, but no longer a titan. Now, he was learning the rhythms of the diner, burning his first batch of pancakes, spilling coffee, and earning laughs from regulars like Carlos, the mechanic, who called out, "Stick to lemons, man!" But Ethan persisted, his blistered hands proof of his commitment. Maya watched him, her heart torn between caution and hope. He wasn't the boy who'd left her in 1997, but could he truly belong here? In a quiet moment, Ethan joined Maya at the counter, his fingers smudged with lemon zest. He said, "I found something in the old Caldwell Group files," pulling out a tablet. The original Southside redevelopment plan wasn't just condos. It included preserving historic businesses like this diner, creating a community hub, not a sterile mall. Maya studied the plans, her eyes tracing sketches of green spaces and local shops, with Maya's Place at the center. "This could work," she said, her voice soft. "Real change, not just gentrification." Nia approached, her sketchbook showing a drawing of the diner bustling with life. "You're serious about this," she said, her tone less guarded than before. Ethan nodded. "I built an empire once, Nia. It was empty. Helping this place, this neighborhood, feels right." Nia's eyes softened, a flicker of trust breaking through. She said, "Don't mess it up." But her small smile betrayed her warming heart. Later, as the lunch rush slowed, Ethan tried flipping a pancake, only for it to land half-cooked on the griddle's edge. Maria hooted, clapping. "You're getting there, Caldwell." Maya handed him a spatula, her touch lingering. "You're not bad for a beginner," she teased. Ethan laughed, then grew serious. "I was scared to lose it all. Status, power. But you showed me what matters, Maya. This place, these people, it's worth more than any boardroom." Maya met his gaze, seeing the boy she'd loved, now tempered by time and choice. "It's not easy," she said. "This life takes work." "I'm ready for work," Ethan replied, stirring a new pitcher of lemonade. This time, he got the balance right. Sweet, tangy, just like Miss Loretta's recipe. Joe tasted it, nodding. "Not bad, rookie. You might belong here yet." The regulars cheered, and Nia added a sketch of Ethan at the counter to her book, her lines softer now. Outside, the lemonade stand gleamed, a symbol of continuity, but the diner, alive with laughter and shared purpose, held the future. Ethan stayed late, scrubbing dishes beside Maya, the neon sign casting a warm glow through the windows. He said, "I'm not the man I was," his voice low. "I want to be the man you deserve." Maya paused, her hands in soapy water, and smiled. "Keep showing up, Ethan. That's a start." As they worked, the community's strength surrounded them. Joe's stories, Maria's encouragement, Nia's growing trust. Ethan's transformation wasn't complete, but each clumsy step, each shared laugh, was a brick in a new foundation, built not on wealth, but on love and resilience. The Phoenix sun rose over the revitalized corner of Maya's place, its neon sign glowing softly against the morning sky. The lemonade stand, now a permanent fixture with a gleaming copper roof, stood proud, its sign still declaring Maya's famous lemonade, best in Phoenix. A year had passed since Ethan Caldwell's public stand against the Sterling merger and Reggie Carter's threats, and the neighborhood had transformed. New shops, a bookstore, a bakery, lined the street, their facades blending old charm with new life, with Maya's place as the heart. Today, the stand was adorned with lemon blossoms and roses, ready for a wedding that had captured the city's imagination. Maya stood in the diner's small office, adjusting a simple white dress that hugged her frame with quiet elegance. A locket with a photo of her late husband, James, hung at her throat, a nod to the past she'd carried through love and loss. Nia appeared in the doorway, her blue bridesmaid dress vibrant against her sketchbook, which she held like a shield. She said, "Ethan's at the park," her smile soft but bright. "He's nervous, pacing like a kid." Maya laughed, touching the locket. James would have loved this, getting married where it all started. Nia nodded, her eyes glistening. "He'd say you deserve this, Mama." The past year had been a whirlwind. Carter's loan shark empire had crumbled after Richard Caldwell's evidence led to a federal sting, and his arrest was headline news. The $500,000 Small Business Administration loan had saved Maya's diner from foreclosure, allowing her to hire staff and expand into the adjacent storefront. No longer CEO, Ethan threw himself into the community development project to ensure Maya's place remained the neighborhood's soul. Using Eleanor's trust fund, Nia was planning her art gallery, her sketches now featuring hope, portraits of the diner, the stand, and even Ethan, his flannel shirt smudged with lemon zest. Outside, the park across from the diner was alive with guests. Joe, the retired teacher, sat in a booth moved outside for the occasion, his newspaper swapped for a glass of lemonade. Maria, the nurse, and Aisha, the schoolteacher, arranged flowers, their laughter mingling with the crowd's chatter. Carlos, the mechanic, had built the wedding arch, its wood carved with lemon motifs. Eleanor Caldwell sat in the front row, her simple dress a far cry from her old designer coats, her tentative smile a sign of her slow reconciliation with Ethan. She'd returned from a year in California, and her apology letter to Maya was a step toward healing. Maya stepped out, her brother Daniel at her side, guiding her down an aisle lined with photos. Her and Ethan in 1997, the lemonade stand's evolution, James with baby Nia, the diner's opening. The images told a story of resilience, now crowned by love. Ethan waited under the arch, his simple suit echoing their first date, eyes locked on Maya. Richard stood beside him as best man, his face warm with pride. The justice of the peace began, but it was their vows that hushed the crowd. "Maya," Ethan said, his voice clear, 28 years ago, I chose fear over love, building an empire that left me empty. You built a home here, with every cup of coffee, every smile. I'm here to stand beside you, not to save you, but to learn from you. Maya squeezed his hands, her voice steady. Ethan, I kept this corner not for you, but for me, to become strong enough to forgive, brave enough to love again. You didn't rescue me. You chose to walk with me. The crowd cheered as they kissed, the lemonade stand glowing behind them. The celebration spilled into the diner, which was closed for the day. Maya, still in her dress, served lemonade to Ethan. You got the recipe right? She teased, pouring a glass. Nia grinned, tossing in, Grandma's secret was love, right? Joe raised his glass. To love and lemonade. The laughter rose, and Nia caught the bouquet, blushing as she glanced at Javier, the young chef hired last spring. Eleanor approached, handing Maya an envelope. For the gallery, she said softly. I want to help Nia's dream grow. Maya nodded, her forgiveness a quiet gift. Richard joined them, his apron from his pie-making lessons tied proudly. I'm learning, he said, winking at Maya. Outside, the neighborhood thrived, its new life a testament to their shared fight. Maya and Ethan slipped to the stand as the sun set, sharing a glass of lemonade. Maya confessed that I added extra sugar that day, leaning against him. Wanted you to keep coming back. Ethan laughed, pulling her close. I hated lemonade then, but you were worth every sip. The stars emerged, witnesses to a love 28 years in the making. Maya's place glowed, a beacon of second chances, where love, served daily, proved stronger than any empire.